Hello and welcome to the Divorced Dadvocate. I'm Jude Sandoval and I am very pleased today to welcome Gregory, of the founder of the YouTube channel Red Pill Men's Health, as well as Gregory the Red Pill Guru. Gregory, welcome.
Thank you for having me, Jude. I appreciate it.
Hey, it's my pleasure to have you today. Really excited about our conversation and digging into some of this stuff. Before we get started, we talked about talking about a podcast of why it doesn't make sense to get married for the second time around after divorce, especially if you have kids. But give us a little bit about your background. You've got a really cool, unique, inspirational story, as well as a little bit of how you were led to start your YouTube channels and your websites.
Yeah, sure. So I was an overweight child and adolescent growing up back in the 80s. And I attribute it to early childhood trauma. I had like a rageaholic father and an alcoholic father and a kind of a distant, neglectful mom. And I turned to food at a very young age. And I was morbidly overweight till about 17 years of age. It's about 280 pounds. I had size 58 waist. I was just really good.
You were little.
Really yeah. And so I eventually lost the weight my senior year, and I've kept it off for 30 years. And so I created a podcast about 3 years ago. I actually have three. One of them is Confessions of an Obese Child, where I talk about what it's like to grow up overweight, early childhood trauma, bullying, coping mechanisms that we develop as fat kids and that linger into the present day. Because even when you lose the weight, it's not like you just wake up one day and you think, oh, I'm a normal guy now. You still have all these crutches and so forth. So we talk about that. We talk about food addiction in general. And during that time, I really began to embrace naturopathy, which is the use of like botanical medicine and herbs and clean eating to clean our body, to clean our life. And so I created a podcast called, back then it was, God, it's changed names, Jude, like 4 times. I think it was like Naturopathy Earth Radio, and then it became Holistic Health News, and now it's The Awakened Man, which I'll talk about why I changed it. But I've had that podcast for about 3 years, and it has about 280 episodes, and a lot of them are about toxins in the food, toxins in our house, carcinogens that we're exposed to, medical cover-ups, medical conspiracy theories, things like that. And,
Pandemics.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So we hit all those things. And then about a year ago, I created my YouTube channel. So I was married and I was divorced. So I have 3 kids from my previous marriage, my only marriage, I should say. And the last child was kind of like a trap child. We were like a lot of marriages. We were in our maybe 15th year, sexless. So about 40% of marriages are defined as sexless, which is having sex less than 1 time a month. And so we didn't have sex for a year. And then one weekend she seduced me or allowed me to have sex with her. And we conceived her child and she was 40. She's old. Wow. And then we didn't have sex for another year until the divorce. So I had 3 kids. And then I got in a rebound relationship with a Mormon a few months after the divorce. And of course I thought she was a unicorn. I thought she was somebody different. And accidentally, as much as you can accidentally conceive a child, I accidentally And she had 4 kids from her previous marriage because she was Mormon and all they know how to do is breed and marry really young. So I have 4 kids and that relationship didn't work. We could talk about that later if you like. But I have 4 kids, so I pay 50% to child support. And so about a year ago, I decided to create a YouTube channel called Red Pill Men's Health, where I was going to incorporate a lot of the stuff I talk about in the podcasts, toxins in the food that sabotage men's health, but also talk about red pill stuff, marriage, dating. So I created that about a year ago, and then I created my sister channel. And that channel, Red Pill Men's Health, is now mostly MGTOW stuff. Well, we can talk about that if your listeners don't know what MGTOW is.
Yeah, well, do me a favor quickly, or just briefly, define a little bit what, for those that don't know, what Red Pill is, what MGTOW is, just so we give a point of reference as we go forward and people can understand kind of where you're coming from.
I think a lot of divorced men are at least unofficially adhere to this ideology. But and really quickly, in December, I created Gregory the Red Guru, and that's where I answer questions, like little 5-minute videos people ask me, like, should I pay for a woman on the first day? Should I date a cougar? This woman has an STD. should I marry her? All these kind of red flag things. So that's kind of the quick Q&A YouTube channel.
Mm-hmm.
And then I renamed Holistic Health News the Awakened Man podcast to kind of gear it toward more men's issues, because I was getting a lot of female listeners because they care about, herbs and aromatherapy and all those things. So the Awakened Man podcast is a podcast similar to Red Pill MGTOW, men's topics, men's rights, divorce issues, where I just talk about reasons why you might be want to be reluctant to certainly marry in 21st century America, and just talking about red pill stuff. So red pill, it comes from the Matrix, right? Morpheus offers Neo the red or blue pill. Red pill, he wakes up. So the red pill world, in terms of intersexual dynamics, is kind of like understanding true female nature. And also concomitant with that is understanding the court system and family law in America and how it's set up to really hurt men, or as Nick would say, destroy men or divorce rape men. So under red pill, which would really be under the umbrella of the manosphere, under red pill, you have different branches. So one is going to be the PUA community, or pickup artists. So they want to use what they learned from red pill to seduce women, to pump and dump them, and so forth. Then you have another branch, which is men's rights, MRAs. MRAs are kind of gone now, but MRAs used to fight for the end of alimony, because we can talk about, I don't even know why alimony still exists, but end of alimony, changing custody agreements to be 50-50 with no child support, and other ways that men are screwed over in family law. Then you have MGTOW. MGTOW stands for men going their own way. MGTOW is essentially men choosing not to marry, and there's different levels of MGTOW. So level 1 MGTOW is you still have short-term relationships or hookups, and then you go up the gradations. And level 5 is you essentially live in a cabin and you don't interact with any women at all. So MGTOW is kind of like, I like to say it's like a route of optimization and achieving excellence. So you work on your addictions, purging your addictions, cleaning up your diet, cleaning up your health, and cleaning up any early childhood trauma you have, and working on your finances so you can retire young. But in terms of women, it's to realize that it does not behoove you and serve your best interest to marry, but certainly if you're a divorced man, to remarry. So most MGTOW men will ascribe to the belief that marriage is not the approach to go down to, and we can talk about why that is.
Right. Okay. So, and a lot of times, red pill and some of the different branches that you're talking about get a really bad name as being anti-female, which it's not, which is not necessarily true. It's more talking about human nature and really the world realistically, and how it is period. And so I just want to clarify that, because you get that a lot, and I can already hear the chirping like, oh, you're red pill or MGTOW or whatever. And you know what, there is validity to everything on all sides when people make arguments. And that's why I like to sit and talk about, look, that's the discourse, which is sorely lacking in our society. We were talking about that offline just a few minutes ago. Having this discourse is what makes us better people, more conscious people, and allows us to make better decisions in our lives. So,
according to YouTube, though, it's not, because in YouTube, the cancer culture is prevalent. So a lot of red pill content creators, and some of your listeners might know, like TFM, deplatformed completely. A lot of them, like Entrepreneurs with Cars with Richard Cooper, Coach Craig Adams, a lot of these guys demonetized. So YouTube, which is largely run like all of Silicon Valley by the left, they don't have a problem with a female having a channel saying, work on your addictions, work on being financially independent. Oh, and here's some videos about how you should stay away from narcissistic, abusive men. Yeah. That's applauded. But if a man has a channel that's exactly the same thing, it's misogynistic. And see, that tool is an ad hominem attack used by the left to shame men. I mean, this is commonly used all the time. You hate women. No, we don't hate women. We hate the court system and family law that ironically was set up by men. No fault divorce, for example, where a woman can cheat on you and get, have gangbangs all the time on you behind your back and still fleece you for everything. So we hate family law. So like if you look at my t-shirt here really fast, so we don't hate women. We hate the concept of a legal contract binding men and women, because men have so much to risk by marrying. They risk much more than women, and women will have all the leverage as soon as you sign that marriage contract because they know that they can divorce you at any time. And that is borne out by the statistics that 75% of divorces are initiated by women. And if the women are college educated, it's 90%.
Right. So that gets us into our topic today. And you state that the statistic of 70% of second marriages end up in divorce again. So my audience is divorced fathers specifically,
Sure.
which adds, having children as you do, as I do. I have 3 daughters as well. That adds a whole different level of complexity to dating, to life after divorce, et cetera. So take us through maybe a few of your top reasons why it doesn't make sense to get married again after your first divorce.
Well, I think, oh God, this could take a long time. So I think a lot of times with men, we think the ex-wife who commonly will, I mean, there's a belief in the red pill world that you can't make a woman happy. There's no way to make a woman happy. A woman's love is opportunistic. It's based on Bruffault's law. So a woman's love is based on utility, what you can provide her. And as long as you're providing some usefulness, which is normally in the form of security or money or status, she won't leave. But once she no longer finds that you provide utility, or there's a man who provides it more, we call that monkey branching, she'll leave.
Or hypergamy.
Yeah, through hypergamy, exactly.
Mm-hmm.
So that's kind of one of the concepts behind maybe why the divorce rate's so high. If we look at first marriages, it hovers around 50%.
Well, can I interrupt you for a quick second there? Part of this also is biological, right? So for millennia, women did depend upon men, and that was important for them, for their survival, in order to find a man that was going to assist them in surviving and continuing their family, et cetera. So some of this is not necessarily a conscious thing where women are going, look, I'm waking up this morning and I'm going to figure out how to screw my husband or screw my boyfriend and go and look for something different or better or whatever. Some of this is inherent. Would you agree?
Absolutely. I mean, if you look at human history, we've only been in a civilized society, if you want to even count ancient Egypt, 4,000 years, and we've been around millions of years. Right. So back in the Paleolithic era, women are smaller, weaker sex, so they had to cling to the men to provide them food and to protect them from rape and marauders,
right,
and predators. So it is wired in women to, of course, want to be with a man that can protect them from those things. And so, like the old saying, you can take the woman out of the hood, but you can't take the hood out of the woman, like Cardi B or somebody like that. Women now, of course, can make their own money,
right?
But they're still wired for security and hypergamy.
Yeah.
You can't really take that out of them, just like you can't take out of men to be attracted to young, beautiful, fertile women. That's just
right.
The way we're wired. So I tell people my YouTube channel, it's like we're both superficial. Both sexes are superficial. You can't reason with hypergamy, and you can't really reason with a man why he shouldn't turn his head when he sees a young, beautiful 22-year-old.
And there's nothing wrong with either of those things.
No, there's not. And look, hypergamy is beneficial. And a lot of guys hate hypergamy because they've been burnt by it, right? They got dumped, sure, and the woman moved on very fast to like a doctor or a lawyer. But I try to explain to them, like, we wouldn't exist today if our maternal ancestors didn't practice hypergamy, exactly, by trying to breed with the best man that they could breed. That's why we're here today. But it's hard, just like when a woman hears, she's 40 and no men are looking at her because she's post-wall and her sexual market value. You tell a woman that, they get mad and defensive. So men clearly also get mad and defensive too.
Sure.
When you're broke, because the two groups you really don't want to be are ugly fat women and broke men. If you look at sexual market value.
Right. Sure.
So going back to divorce rate, so it's around 50% for first marriage, but if you're rich, like if you come from a higher SES, it's actually lower. So rich people actually divorce less than working class, but we hover down around 50. So why is the divorce rate for second marriages around 70%? And for third marriages, it's around 79 to 80%, and then higher for more. Well, I think a lot of it is you never did the deep work to fix whatever you caused to make the first marriage work. And again, a lot of men don't want to hear this. A lot of men want to blame the woman 100%, right? She left me. She was rageaholic, cluster B personality disorder. Yeah, I get that. But we all bring baggage from our childhood. We all have PTSD on one level. And this stuff lingers and affects us. And in the male world, I think a lot of it is just we lose our frame. A lot of men are not alpha, or at least very confident. And women crave to be with masculine men, just like men crave to be with feminine women, hyper feminine women. So you see in a lot of marriages, the man becomes just what we call the beta provider.
Yeah.
Just kind of wimpy, pushover. The woman does shit tests. Is it okay for me to cuss?
Yeah, not
Just
too bad. Just,
yeah. Yeah, so the woman will initiate shit tests all the time in a marriage to see how masculine you are. And a lot of men who don't know any better will fail these shit tests because they want to please the woman short term, and in the long term, the woman disrespects him. And in the long term, she'll become disrespectful and even verbally and psychologically abusive. The stats are showing it's about 45% of abusive relationships are actually female to men. Of course, you never hear that. Every time you hear abusive relationships, it's always the man abusing the woman.
Right.
So I think it's previous baggage. I think the stigma of the first divorce is gone, so you know what to do. You already have your lawyer. And compared to 50 years ago, 100 years ago, there really is no stigma to divorce anymore. I think that's part of it. I think the pressure of blended families. A lot of men make the cardinal mistake of marrying the single mom. And we can talk about this later if you want. Men should not be marrying single moms, but a lot of men do. And that brings on a whole package of issues. Having blended families brings a lot of stress and so forth. I think that has a lot to do with it as well. So, I mean, these are some factors. Of course, there's always financial factors as well. But I think a lot of men, it would behoove them to look up these stats because we never think we're going to end up divorced, right? When you got married, when I got married, we thought we're going to get married for life. Nobody does a cursory search of what's the rate of divorce for first or second or third marriages. But even if you tell people that, hey, buddy, I love you to death. If you marry this woman, it's like going on a plane. If we're told the plane's going to crash 70% of the time, are we really going to go on the plane?
Yeah, right.
But most guys are like, oh, you don't know her, blah, blah, blah. And so really in closing, what it is men think their first wife was the exception. She was the bad apple. Then when they meet the new woman, because especially if they haven't purged the relationship thirst and think that their life can only be happy with a woman, they start what we call unicorn building the second woman. So the second woman will white knight him, will love bomb him, so he gets dick napped, so to speak. So he's overwhelmed with sex and flattery. He gets discombobulated. She tells stories because he'll ask, why did you divorce your first husband? She'll white knight him and tell him, oh, he was narcissistic, controlling, abusive. That's the typical three things they hear. He wants to believe it because he's getting laid. So in his mind, he knows, oh, yeah, the first marriage, the woman was XXX. This woman's different. And what they don't understand because they're not red pill is all women have these qualities: solipsism, hypergamy, narcissism. They all have them. They all have them. But we unicorn build. Right. Oh, she's different. And then she'll snowflake, meaning she'll say, I'm different than them. Especially if the guy says, oh, my ex-wife was narcissistic or abusive. Oh, I'm not like her. Right. So she says all these things to buy you in. And then once you sign the marriage contract, then you hear all the time about the bait and switch. Oh, she was so nice and sweet and calmly. We got married, and now she's a rageaholic. Or she love bombed me with a lot of sex, and now we never have sex. This is the bait and switch. Because women can do the bait and switch once you sign the contract because now they have all the leverage.
So let's talk about some practical advice around that. Because I did the same thing you did. I got divorced, got involved in another relationship immediately, basically replacing and doing everything that you just described. And I talk about it all the time. It was absolutely ridiculous. And then ended that one and got into another one until it just, I was beating my head against the wall because it was the same relationship that I had in my marriage going over and over and over again until I stopped and said, okay, I really need to take the time. You said it like from the start, do the work. You need to figure out and do the work immediately. So, what advice when you're getting divorced or going through a divorce? Don't date or wait a period of time or, join a monastery or what?
Look, the way I would look at it, Jude, is if you have kids from a previous marriage, there's absolutely no reason to marry. Absolutely none. But a lot of men who we call blue pill, right? They didn't take the red pill. We'll also call them simps. Don't get that because they were raised by a single mom or they have nice guy syndrome, but they haven't purged the relationship thirst. So the relationship thirst is this idea that my life is incomplete unless I have a woman in my life. And a lot of men want the second mom, or they just need a woman in their life to fulfill their identity. And they're scared of being alone, right? They're scared of being independent. And what we always talk about in the MGTOW world is, no, being alone's great.
Yeah.
Especially if you lived with a rageaholic or a nagging woman or a woman who was messy, never cooked, never cleaned, you never got sex. Why would you want to be in that prison if you could be alone and walk around in your underwear, watch whatever you want, travel whenever you want? You can do whatever you want. But a lot of men still haven't purged their relationship thirst. And so they'll just automatically, like the tractor beam in Star Wars, go straight to the next woman because they feel like their life is incomplete. And so what I always tell men is purge the relationship thirst. You can be very happy alone. Now, men will say, what about sex? And I don't want to die alone. These are the two classic retorts. Well, with the sex, a lot of guys in second marriages aren't getting sex. You'll get sex in the beginning, but the competition anxiety is gone. The woman knows that she's your only recourse for sex. She's not going to be giving you sex as much. And then also you're looking at sexual market value of women. Women are going to become menopausal. They hit the wall. So they're not going to want sex because they're no longer making testosterone, which is a sex drive hormone. So they're not going to want sex. So a lot of guys get married just for them. They don't realize they're going to be in another sexless marriage. And so I don't want to die alone is this idea, well, I don't want to die alone. No one wants to die alone. But look, the divorce rate of second marriages is 70%. So chances are, if you get remarried, she's going to divorce you. You're going to have the gray divorce, which is the worst, because you only have 5-10 years to recover before you retire, and you're going to be alone either way.
So how do you recommend purging that relationship thirst as you describe it?
Well, I have a course on my channel. It's a 4-hour course called redpillmenshealth.com. I have a 4-hour course called that. But in general, you have to intellectually know all the stats first. You have to understand all women have certain inherent wiring. You have to understand the divorce rate's very high. You have to understand you are not going to be the exception. Because look, even if first marriage, divorce rate's around 50%, then you look at the other 50%, how many of those men are happy? Maybe 15 to 20%, 20 years later. The other half are miserable and they envy single men. They really do. You kind of have to just look at the stats and understand the odds are not in your favor. It's like playing Russian roulette. Okay. So you have to know the intellectual reasons why you shouldn't remarry. Yeah,
which being, men we should be able to do, for at least for the most part, right? Yeah.
We're logical, reasonable people.
Yeah.
If you already have children,
don't do it while she's in bed with you, right?
But why remarry when you already have kids? I mean, the argument is you already have your progeny. Why the hell would you want to anchor yourself to a woman who at any time can initiate divorce and take all your assets and take your kids away? But again, this is a logical approach, and you think men are logical, but a lot of men, you have to purge the thirst here, but you have to purge the thirst also in your heart and in your loins, in both places. And that's where men have the problem, because a lot of guys are nice guys. They're nice guys. They're beta simps. They feel like they need a woman. They don't know how to maintain alpha masculinity in a marriage. So the woman's just going to walk all over them and eventually leave them, because women want to be with masculine men. So if your listeners are very adamant on marrying, divorced men or marrying, I'd say you're very foolish. I'll be completely honest with you guys. You're very foolish because the odds are not in your favor. But if you're going to do it, then you really have to assert masculinity.
Okay. So what would you say to somebody that says, well, just as humans, we're wired to be in relationship and to have relationships, and so maybe that's not maybe that shouldn't be for divorced fathers getting married, but how do you go about doing that? How do you live your life? How do you satiate
sex thirst?
Sex thirst, but also relation. I don't necessarily subscribe to the fully that men don't want deeper relationships than just sex. I don't. I agree. Maybe you can speak to that, but I know that I do. There's many men that I talk to. Another thing is families and daughters. I have 3 daughters. I would like to model a healthy relationship for my daughters so that they'll know how to conduct themselves in a relationship from their perspective, but by seeing me in a relationship with somebody, how they're supposed to be treated. Speak to some of that.
So you don't have to necessarily, let's go back to like traditional stuff. Okay, so God created Eve to give Adam a companion, right? And one of the first commandments that God gave us was to be fruitful and multiply.
Mm-hmm.
So certainly we were created to be complementary of each other. We each have our strengths, men and women. But the milieu that we're in now is radically different than even 60 years ago, before the sex positive movement, before radical feminism came in, before the post-Christian world that we live in. We're in a postmodernist world.
Yep.
So it's really hard to apply biblical norms or even norms from 1910, because yes, you can find traditional conservative women, but understand they still have the backing of the modern state.
Mm-hmm.
So anytime they can divorce you, and you can't believe that they'll lie, oh, I'll never divorce you, because again, look at the statistics. They probably will divorce you.
Right.
So we are wired for intimacy. Absolutely. I never encourage men to purge their sex thirst by getting a castration. We are wired to like female touch and female intimacy. So there's different levels of men going their own way. And level one is going to be, you have short-term relationships or maybe long-term relationships, but you never make the cardinal mistake of cohabitation, and you never make the cardinal mistake of marriage, ever. So you can still have relationships, but again, if you marry and you start unicorn building thinking that she's different, chances are you're wrong. Chances are you're going to have the great divorce. And in the long run, you don't want that, right? And this is why MGTOW is about men, helping men. It's not anti-woman. We really don't even care about the woman. It's optimizing men and protecting men, because the court system and family law don't give a damn about men. And this is something that's hard for men to understand. There's no sympathy for men. And then Breffaut's law, a woman's love is based on usefulness. Men think women love them the way we love women. We love women romantically.
Mm-hmm.
Women don't love men the same way. Their love is based on utility. And it's very hard for men to understand this. So when a woman breaks up with him and is effing another dude a month later, he's like, how can she do that? I'm still getting over it. Because they don't understand women. They don't understand war bride syndrome. They don't understand hypergamy. They don't understand a woman's need for security and her overinflated sexual market value. They just don't understand these things because they're not thinking like a woman thinks. Women love fundamentally different. So again, I would tell you, sure, if you want to be in relationships, understand that there are risks in short-term relationships, namely pregnancy, which you can obviate by a vasectomy or always using condom. Mm-hmm. But again, lots of times, you won't always wear a condom. STDs, 50% of relationships or 50% of adults have an STD. Mm-hmm. The big one's false allegations. So there's still women out there that are just crazy borderline personality disorder women. And you could be dating a woman and you're always one phone call away from being destroyed.
Sure.
A woman's word in court is so much stronger than a man. So if she calls the cops after you guys have a fight and says, he beat me, good luck. Good luck. You're going to be thrown in jail. You'll lose your job.
True. Do you feel that maybe that we've gone so far one end of the spectrum now with all of this, that there is the potential to move back with some education, like what you're doing? You're educating men around all of this and everything that you've described. There's clinical psychologists, there's studies. You don't hear this stuff out there about the different traits of men and women and how they're different and everything you described. And when you do say stuff like you do, and when these studies are raised to the awareness of people, they call it sexist, they call it wrong, they say it's anti-female, etc. But it's not. It's science, and science is always science until it's not convenient to somebody's what somebody wants to get across or somebody's agenda. But there is a solid understanding of this. So back to my question, which is, so things have changed. You talked about women making more money, hypergamy. Let me just define. I don't think basically women will marry across and up, right? So they marry. They're not going to marry across and down, and men will marry across and down. So and across, that means like socioeconomically, correct? So do you think with more education, with men understanding the stuff that you're talking about, having the awareness, and women starting to learn and understand that we can get back to some normality, if you will, in that we can start to have relationships, that marriage might take some prominence again at some point?
No, I think it's a complete lost cause, because look, the things that are so preponderant in America, so strong, It's not like 1910 where it was your church and your family. And back then we had very good traditional Christian kind of values. Now the biggest influencers on us is Hollywood, academia, social media, and all of them are radical left, and they're all anti-man. So it's not going to get better. We're in a post-Christian world. It's only going to get more post-Christian. Where radical feminism is not going away. No-fault divorce, which is the biggest destroyer of marriage, it's been around about 50 years now, is not going away. These things are not going away. So what we would need is electromagnetic pulse that blows out all the electricity in the world for women to become, these radical feminists to become tradcons. Because look, you can find tradcon women at a church, let's say. But again,
tradcons, traditional conservatives.
Right, traditional conservatives, right. But again, the court system backs them at all times. So your virtue signaling, demure, tradcon wife can turn on you and just divorce you and fleece you like everything else. And just to juxtapose things, let's talk about like Mad Men. So prior to no-fault divorce, you had to give a reason to divorce. So if you look at someone like Don Draper divorces his wife Betty. It's like 1965. As a result, she gets child support and she gets alimony because back then women didn't work, and so a woman needed money to maintain herself and the children until she died. That made sense. Women didn't work, and in most cases back then, men were divorcing a woman to get with a younger woman. So this was kind of the reward to give to the first wife. Okay? Women never initiated divorce. And if you go back hundreds of years, I mean, it was anathema. If the woman cheated on you in marriage, she'd be stoned, killed, ostracized. So woman's hypergamy was largely in check because it's never gone away. It's been around since the beginning of time. But it was largely kept in check by a religious world that we lived in. So when they brought in no-fault divorce, and now anybody can get divorced for any reason, then you saw the divorce rate skyrocket in the 1970s. And in fact, divorce peaked in 1980. But since 80 to 2020, marriages, I should say, are dropping slowly and cohabitation is going up. If you still look at the prevalence of divorce, it's still very, very high. But now with no-fault divorce, women realize either consciously or unconsciously that there's a financial incentive to divorcing because now most states are community property. So if the man is making $350,000 a year and she's a teacher making $50K, they're just going to group all that into $400,000, divide it in half, give the woman $200K, give the man $200K. So she's going to get this big financial payout. Plus she gets child support. Women are given the kids 85% of the time. Plus she's going to get alimony if you live in states that have alimony, where she can be paid until she dies. And employers don't even do that, right? No employer is going to pay you until you die, even after you quit or they fire you.
Right.
So women understand on one level, damn, I can make a lot of money on this. You combine that with solipsism, the belief of just kind of like women see things through the prism of what is useful to them, not to what's to the betterment of anybody else. So you'll see a woman leave the man, even though it's bad for her kids, because I'm unhappy. Those kind of things is classic female solipsism. It's like a form of narcissism. So you combine that, you combine the fact that women have way overinflated sexual market values, and we could talk about that if your listeners don't know what SMV is. But women, I mean, a woman who's 39 and has 3 kids believes she's a 9 on an SMV out of 1 to 10, when really she's a 2.
SMV is sexual market value.
Right. So women have this inflated view, and then there's always going to be beta simps that are going to marry the single mom with all this baggage. And so you can have an attractive woman marry a doctor at 23, okay? Me married 5 years, have a kid, divorce him. Let's say he makes $250,000 a year. She's going to get half of his assets and 20% for child support. 20% of $250,000 is $50,000. So she's going to get $50,000 a year. Then, a few years later, she'll find the next dude. She'll be 28, maybe still in good shape if she's good looking. Marry the next guy, an accountant. Makes $200K. Stay married to him 3 years, have a kid with him, divorce him, and she'll get, $40K from that guy. And then at the end, when her SMV's rock bottom and she's gained weight and she's not attracted, she might find the beta provider. And he's like this schlubby, overweight guy who's always wanted to be with women. And he'll just jump on that and marry her, not understanding that she doesn't find him attractive. It's like Chris Rock's old saying, why is your woman always mad at you? because you weren't her first choice. So women are so wired for security that they'd rather be with a guy they don't respect and love than be alone. So at the end, they'll marry the beta provider and walk all over him, disrespect him. And then if they want, they could cheat on him, cuck him, get pregnant by another man. But ultimately, she can still initiate divorce and take all of his assets, even though she's the one who's cheating. So the whole system is set up to benefit women. Now, men will say, Gregory, that's a very cynical view. Look, it's not necessarily cynical, but a woman can do that, and women do that quite often.
Well,
the system is interfered.
So then where are we long term? Where as a species do we go long term if men and women can't, figure this out, and we can't, and men, MGTOWs are going their own way. We're not coming together as traditional families. We're not, not creating the nuclear families anymore, and all of the positives that come from that, because there's innumerable positives to that, and studies have shown that's great for men, for women, for kids. Where do we go from here? Because my challenge always with MGTOW is that I want to stand up and I want to fight, and that's not always in my best interest. I know that, and I've done that in court because it's in the best interest of my daughters, and spent the just ridiculous amounts of money fighting against the bias in the court, and also stand up in the dating world for what I believe is the right way to date, the right way to go about this process, as well as just demonstrating to my daughters that it is possible. Trust me, it's infinitely more difficult than just going my own way. So speak to that a little bit.
Well, I would just pause at the question, why do you feel the need to date, and why do you need to feel the need to find another woman? If it's because you want to have a good role model for your daughters, I don't know. That seems like a specious reason. I think there's relationship thirst there, because, again, I think you intellectually know the reasons why remarriage isn't really going to work, but you're still going down that road. So I think on one level, men need to see the way the system is, and it's not in our benefit to marry. And again, if you already have kids, the risk is all on you.
Sure.
So women will say, oh, but a woman can marry an abusive man. Granted, that's true. You watch Tyler Perry movies, right? Every man is beating his wife. But statistically, it is not that common that men are physically beating his wife. But even if he is, let's just say he is, she can still extricate herself from that situation and divorce him and fleece him from all his money. So since women only marry men who make the same amount or more than them, women disproportionately are going to benefit from divorce. And men should know this and then not sign the marriage contract. Look, if you want to have a long-term relationship or a short-term, all right, understand the risks. And we already talked about them: false allegations, crazy cluster B tendencies, but mitigate your risk. If you feel the need to be in a relationship, just never cohabit and never marry. But it's astonishing to me, men who want to remarry after they've been divorce raped. It's just mind-boggling to me. But I understand why they do it on one level, because they're unicorn building and they think their ex-wife was the exception. And they don't understand the system we live in, the milieu we live in, is cranking out more of these women that are damaged. And we, Chad and Tyrone and all these guys who are pumping and dumping, are contributing to damaging these women. And these women feel bitter and hurt by men, and they become radical feminists. And so you have this cycle that continues all the time. And if you look at the studies, the more sexual partners a woman has, higher rate of depression, higher rate of addiction, higher rate of divorce, because women are not meant to be sex positive. The sex positive movement has destroyed women. Men can bang women all they want. It doesn't affect them mentally. Women are not wired like that. They're not. And the feminists know this, but the feminists keep telling the women, go ride the COCK carousel, bang as many men, live your life. And they are damaging these women. And then men our age come along, they meet a woman, they don't know she's had 45 partners. And believe me, getting 45 partners is not hard. It really isn't in the sex positive Tinder world we live in. And they have no idea that this woman is going to have pair bonding problems because she's been passed around on the carousel. And she probably is going to have addictions that you're going to have to deal with. But again, men don't want to see that. Men want to think that the new girl is different than the other girls. And you're only going to see the real woman until after you sign the contract.
Yeah, so I agree with everything you're saying, but we still so where are we? Where are we going with this? Our species basically will not in any time soon cease to exist, but eventually we're going to cease to exist. And I can tell you the reason that I have done the work. So like I described, I spent years in relationships right after that, and then said, no, this is crazy, and now have spent the years doing the work. And everything you say is absolutely accurate, because in the last 5 years, I have not been able to find a single woman in all the dates and the hundreds of first dates that I've had that would even come close to me saying, yeah, this is somebody I can see as a long-term partner, because I do exactly what you describe and think through all this stuff. And it's remarkable to me how many men don't do that, but also how many women aren't thinking the same way that we do. So I still, and I want to fight for figuring this out because of what you just described, this cycle. How do you end that cycle? How do you end that cycle? How do you end this cycle of the court system being completely corrupt? The cycle of the radical feminists, the anti-male, just everywhere you see it, Hollywood commercials, everywhere, everything's anti. How do you end that if you just walk away from it?
Well, I mean, then you would be a men's rights activist. You're an MRA because you want to fight the system. MRAs have largely lost because, look, the largest voting bloc in America are women. Mm-hmm. Women are going to vote to increase the welfare state. And going back to one of the other biggest destroyers of marriage is the welfare state. Because if you look prior to the 1960s, the illegitimacy rate was very low. But now government is the father and the husband and essentially the gun of the woman that she can use to fleece you of your money. So why would a woman have to be a good wife if she can just get money from the government and essentially income redistribution of your assets and given to her? And so now you see illegitimacy rates 50% in the white community, close to 80% in the black community. So going back to it, women are the largest voting bloc. They vote for security. They vote for equality of outcome, not equality of opportunity.
Right.
So you're fighting that. And you're fighting academia and Hollywood are radically left and they're anti-men. This is why they call all aspects of the manosphere as hate speech. The Southern Poverty Law Center labels manosphere as a hate group.
Yeah.
That's because the left labels us that, even though we're just looking out for men, right? Heaven forbid men look out for men. Women can look out for women. That's noble. Men look out for men. We're hateful. So you're looking at these factors. Christianity is largely gone. Now, that's not to say, look, if you are a Mormon, small-town Mormon, ultra-traditional Catholic like I am, a Hasidic Jew, if you can find women that still tie their salvation to marriage and they know that there is a chance they'll lose their salvation by divorcing, because like in the Catholic and Orthodox world, it's a sacrament and you can't divorce.
Right.
And Christ says it, you can't remarry, but that's a separate topic. So if you can find a woman who still believes that, the true unicorn, then maybe you can take a chance on marrying her because she understands that in her close-knit community, if she divorces you, she will be shunned, she will lose her family, and she might go to hell. So these are things that can stifle hypergamy. But if you're looking at the typical Western woman, American woman, who's not really religious, their values chameleon, meaning they only adhere to whatever values that the guy they're currently dating adheres to because they're just trying to love bomb them. The typical woman, good luck. And so when you're having problems finding a woman to date, it's not surprising because most of the women are overly tattooed. They've been banged over and over, and they really provide no usefulness to a good man. Yeah. TFM, the guy who got to platform, he has a saying, and this is a very cynical saying. He would say, there's nothing a woman can provide that a dog, a good group of friends, and a sex doll can't replace. And that's a very cynical thing. But with the sex doll, it's because the sex doll can't divorce you, take your money, talk back to you, throw vases at you, call the cops on you, and so forth. So do I think things are going to change? Absolutely not. We're not going to change. Society is just becoming more morally depraved, bigger government, welfare state's getting bigger, the power of the left is getting stronger. It's not going to change. The only thing that's going to change is if we have like an EMF blast or electricity is gone, and then all these radical feminists who don't know how to do anything are going to run to the men.
Yeah, right.
But aside from that, nothing's going to change. And I don't want to be negative Nancy,
Yeah.
but and you can call me certainly cynical, but there's nothing that I see that's going to change women to be more noble, and nothing is going to change the divorce laws, because the divorce laws as a whole benefit government and they benefit the women. They don't benefit us, but again, we're disposable. So nothing's really going to change, Jude.
Yeah. Well, Gregory, we're gonna have to leave it at that because we're out of time. I do appreciate all that you do in raising the awareness of all of these issues. I can't argue with most of what you state because it's based in facts and data and science and studies. And I encourage anybody that might, if this irritates people that are listening to this, men, women alike, do some research and start looking it up, start talking to divorced fathers, start talking to other men, and have these conversations. So I will also leave it on this, is start having the conversations, have them with your buddies, have them with your fathers and your family members, have them with your daughters, and have them with other women. And I hold out a little more hope. I personally will keep fighting this fight because I want to break the cycle of all of these things. Now I'm doing that maybe on just a small scale with this podcast and maybe in my small life, but and who knows, I might be wrong and it might be hopeless.
I don't want you to misinterpret what I'm saying. I think that from a grassroots level, we do need to affect change. This is why we both have outlets. I mentioned you before, and I was fired from my job because a woman who was not even connected to my job anonymously reported me to HR that what I was saying was hate speech, and so they fired me. So I lost my job because of my YouTube channel, because I show my face. A lot of guys don't show their face because they're smart. Yeah. But it is dangerous out there. But I also feel like we have a mission to help men, because 70% of suicides are done by men. Men are not getting help. So if we can help men in any way, that's what our mission is. And I think it is worth somewhat the risk that we go through.
I agree. And I appreciate all you do. Please let everybody know how they can get in touch with you, where they can find your sites, and how we can support you.
Yeah, so redpillmenshealth.com is my website. And the YouTube channel, the main one, the flagship, is Red Pill Men's Health. You can catch me on podcasts, on Apple Podcasts or Stitcher, wherever, at The Awakened Man. That's my main one. And those are the best ways you can support me. If you go to Red Pill Men's Health, I have courses there, how to get over a divorce quickly. I have a donation link over there. I do coaching calls for guys who are struggling. So that's just the best way to catch me is redpillmenshealth.com.
Awesome. Gregory, I sincerely appreciate it.
Thank you, Jude. I appreciate it. Take care.
Take care.
God bless. Bye-bye.